The new expansion for Guild Wars 2, Janthir Wilds, is out, and in every expansion the best thing is exploring the new maps and trying out new builds. But not always do you know what build to play, and a lot of build guides are optimized for a specific content. So in this video I'm going to go over one build for all 9 classes that focuses on the most fun aspects of the new weapon, so that you can explore the open world of the Janthir Wilds and have fun trying out the new spear weapon. If you want more optimized builds later on, then you can check out the open world or any other build section on guildgen.com, linked below. Without any further delay, let's get into the Ranger. The Ranger spear is very versatile because it allows ranged and melee attacks, though one criticism that many people have is that the skills are very burst oriented, but then you run out of skills to use because of the shared cooldowns between the stealth attacks and the non-stealth attacks. So we don't really want to use the stealth attacks too much, but you can use the stealth attack on the 4 to get a little bit more CC, which is going to be nice with the carnivore trait, which makes you lifesteal when you CC. But essentially what we're going to do to alleviate that criticism is we're going to take the quick draw trait in the skirmishing trait line and the Untamed specialization, which is going to give us more abilities to use because we're going to get lower cooldown on the first skill that we use in the weapon that we swap to, and then we're going to get an Unleashed Ambush from the Untamed spec. So we've got more skills to use so that by the time our weapon swap is off cooldown, we're still pressing buttons and not just auto attacking, which can feel kind of boring. The Engineer Spear is pretty good for Mechanists because Mechanist usually relies on the mech, which means they have plenty of time to do other things. And the Spear is a pretty high investment weapon. You just use the 2, 3, 4, 5, then you go back to the 3. But that takes some time for it to cook. So generally you're not going to have time to go into a bunch of different kits. However, I put this on my most fun Holosmith build, which used a flamethrower kit before, but now you don't need to take that anymore because the spear does quite a bit of damage that can make up for the loss of the flamethrower kit, and you get an extra defensive utility as a result, and you're still doing really good damage. Now this build relies on dodging to remove your heat, and this works very well with the River's Relic, which seems better than it actually is because it gives you alacrity on dodge, and not many classes have access to alacrity. But the thing is, dodging is a loss of DPS, and gaining alacrity is not necessarily always better. So generally on classes where you're getting value out of dodging, like Vindicators or Mirage, the River Relic is pretty good. But especially on this build, we're doing burning whenever we dodge, so the River's Relic is giving us some good value, which can lower the cooldown on a lot of our skills. So we never really need to go into a secondary kit. Just do the Photon Forge, go into the spear, and then we're good to go. The Thief's Spear has some very interesting mechanics with lead attacks and finishing attacks, basically like the Guild Wars 1 chain attacks that Assassins had. But essentially the 2 skill has a 3 chain and the 3 skill has a 3 chain. The 3 skill is usually more power oriented with some lifesteal and then stealth, and the 2 skill is a little bit more Condi oriented. But the reality is that the 2 skill does more damage for both. So you just want to spam the 2 skill pretty much always, but if you're under pressure and you need some healing, spam the 3 skill because the second in the chain for the 3 skill is a lifesteal, which can help you survive. Now the spear is also lacking in mobility and it's kind of slow, so I went for the Specter specialization, which can allow you to get the Necromancer relic and then use the wells to get quickness and mobility to move around the map. And then all you need to do is just spam 2 on the target because it has no mobility tied to it, but you get that from the Specter Wells. And it feels pretty good to get extra initiative by popping into your Shroud and getting the Quick Pockets trait. The Elementalist Spear has a lot of fun and amazing animations. It essentially gives off the traditional mage gameplay that was kind of missing from Elementalist until now. So now we've got a really long range kind of AoE weapon, which is one of my favorites in the entire set. So essentially how the weapon works is you've got some interesting utility on the 2, 3, and 4, but the 5 skill is your etch, And when you use that, it will create a massive glyph. You use 3 skills. It doesn't matter which skills. It could be your auto attack or utility skills or the Jade Sphere as a catalyst. And once you've used 3, then you can use the final form of that skill, the 5 skill, and then you do a massive attack. Now the etches in air, fire, and earth do quite a bit of damage, but the water will give you a good amount of healing. So if I were to come up with a set rotation that you could do in each attunement without having to think about which one you're in, so you could just do this over and over in each attunement, it would be 5, 2, 4, 3, 5. And just repeat that in air. 5, 2, 4, 3, 5. Go to fire. 5, 2, 4, 3, 5. Go to earth. 5, 2, 4, 3, 5. Now it's a little bit different in water attunement because that's generally for healing. So you want to use the 5 and then the 3, which is a healing combo. And then you can use the arcane wave, which is another healing combo. Use your heal skill, which is another healing combo. And that should get you to full health from anywhere. The Mesmer Spear adds a new viable DPS option for power mirages. And this is because before you didn't really have a good weapon option for like single target DPS other than the dagger, but then you didn't have anything to swap to. You had the greatsword, which is good for AoE, but not really good sustained damage. So now with the spear, we can take the dagger and spear and have very good sustained DPS options, because the spear's ambush skill is just a really heavy hitting melee attack. So you can repeatedly use that and get a lot of value out of the illusionary ambush with mimic, and just using your dodges over and over with the energy sigils so that you can have sustained damage in melee range with AoE, and then swap to your dagger for like single target ranged sustained damage. The Necromancer spear doesn't stand out so much, mostly because Necromancer already has a lot of good weapon options. But if I had to choose one unique thing about it, it's that it has a mobility option. When you hit a target with your force skill, you can teleport to them. And that's really interesting because before last expansion, there was not any real mobility options on your weapons. And with the sword, they added mobility. So now if you take sword and spear, you've basically got the fastest necro build in the West. So what I went for is a kind of Power Reaper build with the Dread trait to get some quickness outside of Shroud, and that's going to allow us to get a little bit more value out of the somewhat slow-ish spear animations. And then we can just get the lifesteal from the spear 2, use the force skill, which recharges the 2 and get even more lifesteal. And then we've got the atrocity relic, which gives us a little bit more damage from lifesteal and more healing to make up for the fact that we're not going for blood magic or anything like that. Otherwise, most necro builds fill in the gaps with their shroud, so you don't need to worry too much about one weapon lacking in something, because you're going to get that value from the shroud. Now, Warrior Spear is interesting because Warriors lacked ranged options. It's got like several melee weapons, and then they've got the rifle, which is a nice ranged burst weapon, but it was like the only option for that. Longbow doesn't really count. It's more of like a half melee, half range weapon. So there wasn't really a purely ranged playstyle for warriors until the spear, which is now also kind of like the rifle, but it's got a little bit more versatility and mobility to it. So now I've got a Berserker build with the rifle and the spear, and we're just going to be using the F1 abilities to get massive damage off and just recharge our burst skills as fast as possible, survive using the Zakiros relic, and just keep getting crits from the arms traits with the signet to recharge our adrenaline, and just kind of spam as much as we can at range, because now we've got a range option as warrior. The Revenant Spear is a hybrid weapon that relies on spamming the 5 skill as much as you can, and then using the other skills on the weapon set to recharge the 5 skill more. And the more stacks of the 5 skill you get by hitting enemies with it, the stronger it becomes and therefore gives more torment. Then once you've got 3 stacks, you can swap out of that weapon once you've basically got everything on cooldown, and it will do the 5 skill again. So you can do heavy damage over time when this ramps up, and this is perfect for a celestial build that can survive a long time in fights and get that ramping damage. Now the build that I'm using is an Atrocity Relic, which is survival from lifesteal and healing. And then we're using the Devastation trait line and the Renegade trait line and the Invocation trait line, which all have synergy with increasing your lifesteal damage and healing. So we're essentially surviving from lifesteal and then just doing hybrid like power and condition damage using the Mace Axe and the new Spear. And finally is the Guardian Spear, which is like a hybrid damaging and supportive weapon that can give a little bit of boons here and there, but mostly just healing and then some cleansing and a decent amount of damage. It's got some mobility on it, so it's a decent replacement option for the staff, which is not as mobile, but it gives a little bit more healing. Though you could use the staff and the spear, I feel like that's maybe too supportive for like an open world build. So I went for the greatsword and spear. So it's a power firebrand build, which can give some quickness to allies nearby. I wouldn't get 100% quickness on this build, but it's enough to do burst damage with the greatsword 2, which you can give yourself quickness during using the heal skill, which is a mantra. And then you can pull in enemies around you with the greatsword 5 into your spear combos. Essentially, the spear abilities will become illuminated to give an added effect, but you don't really need to think about this too much as it's just more of the same thing. And as long as you're hitting things, you're going to keep getting that anyways. And what you want to do is use the 2 skill after you use the 3 skill so that you kind of wind up the 3 skills kind of delayed AoE and then run into the position you want to blow it up in. And then use the 4 skill on top of the enemies there and the 5 skill for the symbol. So those are all 9 classes with what are, I think, the most fun builds that you can play with their new weapon. As opposed to previous versions of this video in previous expansions, I focused a lot more on fun and accessibility this time because you don't really need to optimize for open world, and the experience of that first playthrough of the story is like nothing else. So facilitating it with a very fun build, I think, is the most important thing. But let me know what you think in the comments if you think I could improve these builds. And if you like this video, then obviously like it, subscribe for more, and I will see you all in the next one.